Sure.
Yeah, so let's get into it. Starting off, lovely to have you on our show. What is your name? What are your pronouns? What's your ethnicity? And who are you?
Yeah, so I am Christina Calcote. A lot of people know me as TikTok Tina on TikTok. My pronouns are they, she. I am biracial. I am Korean and white. And I am an artist living in New York, focusing on the intersections of art and politics and identity and how to kind of put all those things in a very accessible way.
Yes. And we're gonna hopefully talk about all those things today.
Yeah, hopefully.
Cover a lot of ground, hopefully. And yeah, so how did you get here? How did you first get into acting, and how did your journey lead you to New York?
Oh yeah. So my mom says that I dressed up for Halloween for the first time and then I just never got out of costume. So I think that's like pretty classic for a lot of actors. But honestly, it was, the beginning is just, I loved movies, I loved theater, I loved that exploration of stories, but in a deeper sense, as, someone who was dealing with a lot of internal struggles, a lot of mental illness that I couldn't quite put into words and understand, my escape was watching movies and loving theater. It was a way for me to not only escape, like participating was a way for me to just escape myself and be someone who was strong or funny or evil. And I got to express all those emotions in a way. But it was also just a way for me to have my worldview expand. I'm from Memphis, Tennessee, which is a great city, but I had a very limited worldview. But getting exposed to even Disney movies, it was the intro of me getting different perspectives. And so that is how I kind of caught the acting bug. I remember asking my mom, like, can I please do theater? And very lovingly, she's like, you can do church theater for a little bit. So bless her. So we did church theater for the first little bit of my life. And then I moved into doing it in middle school and high school. And then freshman year of high school, I went to my parents and I was like, hey, this is what I want to do. I really actually want to do this. So they were actually incredibly supportive, which I'm very, very, very lucky about. And I went to Baylor down in Texas. Sick Bears. It was funny. I say with Baylor, I went to there kicking and screaming. It was one of those places where my brother went to school there. And so in my brain, I was like, anywhere but Baylor. I want to be literally anywhere in the world but Baylor. But, I went all over the world, I went all over the country. I went all over the country, visiting a bunch of different programs. And the art that I saw at Baylor just stuck with me because it was theater that inspired conversation, where I would go to these shows with my mom and my brother, and we would see a production of A Doll's House, and it would become a way for us to have a conversation about mental illness and the role of women in the early 1950s and how that plays into our modern day. We saw Experiment with an Air Pump, which was a way for us to talk about pro-choice versus pro-life, pro-birth points of view. And, these are conversations that I could not have cultivated on my own out of fear or lack of education or just a way of beginning that conversation. But theater was a way to do that. And that's when it clicked. I was like, I have to be in this program because this is what I want to cultivate. So went to Baylor, majored in theater performance, and then I moved to New York about a year and a half ago. And I've just been doing the actor social media thing and auditioning like a crazy person, and keeping up with socials, and found a really cool community. And here I am with 2 screaming cats.
and here you are, and doing an amazing job of it so far, and really knocking it out of the park. Really,
you're very sweet. Thank you.
What is the sports reference that I'm looking for right now? Breaking out of the gates fast.
I wish I knew what even sport you were referring to. So honestly, you could say anything. I'll be like, yeah, probably, sure.
A horse race when the gates open and they run out.
There we go.
Yes.
Yes.
It's Monday. It's too early for sports references. I apologize. But yeah, it's always too early for sports references. But
Hey,
if
you can make any sports reference you want, and I'll just like nod very enthusiastically.
okay,
I'm very good at that.
got you. I hear you. Yeah, but if I'm understanding correctly, you sort of, so I guess, self-identify as like a theater kid, like you've known for a very long time that like this was your
Unfortunately, yeah.
passion.
So
Yeah.
embarrassing.
No, that I think that's awesome. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And you mentioned like the social justice aspect of it. How has that sort of impacted, I guess, the work that you've done
Mhm.
to this point and your, I guess, your career going forward? How will it impact it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I feel very lucky that I kind of got that idea of the art that I wanted to participate in even before I kind of became the fullest version of myself that I am today. So, like, before I even technically expanded my politics and how I identified, even in high school, there was just this itch within me where I was like, I just feel connected to something greater than myself. And I feel like theater is a way to do that. And so, one of my first experiences was, I think it was my senior year of high school. And we had our like drama committee, like pick out the show we were going to do. And I read the play, and it was some, it was some like shitty, it's a high school theater thing. It was like a murder mystery. And when I read it, there was only one character that had a specified race, and it was an Asian American man, and he was this like famous murder mystery writer. And throughout the play, he was mistaken for other Asian American people. And that was a common joke.
Oh,
He was the butt of the joke, like, oh,
right.
are you this? No, no, I'm not. And then there was literally lines like, oh, are you like, they literally like threw a pot down the stairs. And they're like, you sound like the Oriental. And literally called this person like ching chong ding dong and like all that shit. And my good friend Philip, who is Chinese American, was already like, I don't want to do theater my senior year. I'm taking a break. And he was our only Asian American guy. And so I remember reading that play and just coming home to my mom and dad crying. And I was like, I don't know what to do. You're a 17-year-old kid, and now you're going up against your teacher and this whole like elected theater, bourgeoisie that I have to face. And, and I gave it to like my mom and dad. I was like, can you read this? Like, am I just overreacting? Like, I don't know why this is like hurting and feeling weird. And the big thing was me, like, I love my friend Philip. I don't want him to be forced to do something that he doesn't want to do. One, two, he's going to be in a position where he's going to be made fun of. And three, if he doesn't do it, then who's going to fulfill this role? So we either put our friend in a compromising situation against his will, where he's going to be made fun of every night in the play, but made fun of every night, or we put someone in yellow face.
Yeah.
So I went to my director and I was like, hey, I do not find this okay. And I got chewed out. Wow. And she was like, well, you should have read this beforehand. That's not my problem. This was approved by whoever. If you want a different play, you have to find one. And you have to find it by Friday. It was a Monday when I talked to her. No, I think it was like a Wednesday. It was a Wednesday when I talked to her. And it was like that moment where I was like, things kind of melded together, where I was like, oh, theater and stories can be used as, yes, a way to heal, but oh my God, how could it be like so incredibly hurtful as well? So even before I really got my own politics and worldview and alignment where I am now, I just kind of always had this pull. I had this pull towards like deeply knowing how impactful storytelling can be. And so that then translated to my college choice and the shows I wanted to participate in. And then also at Baylor, I was one of the few Asian American people, I think literally
On campus, probably.
Yeah, on campus one, but especially in the theater department, It was only two of us in performance majors. And also it was a big deal for, I noticed, you notice after a while that most of the BIPOC people are mixed with white, specifically the women. And so you have all of these women here who have an affinity towards whiteness, affinity towards lighter skin. And it was very obvious to us that we felt like the very approachable token. You know, we were a way to make these shows seem more inclusive and diverse when it was still a non-threatening ethnic presence.
Right.
And unfortunately, even in college, about once a year, I would have to go to a professor and talk about like, hey, you're wanting to do this play. And I know Ionesco's Rhinoceros is a fabulous work for us to study. But when you have your main character comparing their Asiatic neighbor to the Asiatic rhinoceros versus an African rhinoceros and yelling at about your Asiatic quote unquote neighbor for being yellow, that is incredibly racist. And what does that mean for people who are African American, who are Black, who are Asian, for those casting choices? And it was stuff like that every single year of college. And so being in those spaces in this place of higher education, mind you, it is Baylor in Waco, Texas, but in a place of higher education with overall several people that I do have a lot of respect for, I realized, wow, there's so much work to be done. There's so much work to be done. So that's what really kind of kicked me in the ass, those like experiences of just seeing this hurt over and over and over and over again of I cannot sit idly by. And I realized I had no interest in being cattail. I have no interest in being famous. I have no interest in just getting attention or just doing theater for the sake of entertaining when so much of our quote entertainment comes at the expense of marginalized communities.
And something you said really resonated with me. And just thinking about like, I just feel a lot of like admiration and sort of like compassion for all of like the Asian and Asian American actors who have sort of come before us and have had to play those roles of the token Asian person. And really just like even being an Asian person, being an Asian actor, but also putting on yellow face to be sort of the comic relief in a movie or a show. And I feel a lot of, I mean, sadness, but also admiration for those artists who have sort of paved the way for us so that we can hopefully today, play three-dimensional characters. But yeah, I mean, something that we're probably going to agree on is the lack of that still in the industry. And it's very hard for us to find really just good Asian roles for us to play. So I guess my question is, have you been able to find those things yet in your career, both previously and professionally?
Sure. It's crazy difficult. You look at actors who have paved the way, like, Anna May Wong, and it's like, because of your work and the shit you kind of had to go through and the stereotyping that you were kind of forced into, now we have a clearer path. When I talk about Asian representation in media, honestly, I literally put it in before Crazy Rich Asians and after Crazy Rich Asians.
Right. Yeah.
Which it was one of those things where I remember seeing it with my mom, and my mom's Korean. She was adopted from Korea by white people. And so she really didn't have much of her culture, a lot of, because of that, a lot of internalized white supremacy, like all of us have in the US. And, she didn't really identify strongly with her Korean side until she saw like me and my brother getting bullied, and then that was a way for her to kind of realize, oh, I want to show my kids this is something to be proud of. And I remember watching Crazy Rich Asians with my mom, and my mom's a badass. Like, she's a marathon runner and does like Ironman. Like, she is like a strong, fiery little woman. And I looked over and I just saw her with tears in her eyes. And I was like, oh my God, this is the first time my mom is watching something and she can see herself in every single character. She can't just be the nerd or the dragon lady or the seductress. She can be a villain, and she can be a lover, and she can be a fighter, and she can be all these different things. And it was just this like moment of clarity that I saw come washing over her. And it was something that my dad also noticed. I remember talking to him about it. My dad is an incredible, incredible ally, and he was so excited about that movie. He's like, we're going to buy it. It's going to be great.
We're going to get the DVD.
Yes, exactly. He's like, we're going to get on Blu-ray. And so, and like post that, I've seen so many more roles and opportunities open up for Asian people, you know, for better or for worse, you know, better in the sense of I just see so much more Asian media. For worse, how much of that is, you know, then getting appropriated by white people, feeling fetishized, all that. But I don't think there is any other time in the world up until now that would be better for Asian actors to be doing the damn thing. Yeah. This is the most opportunity we've ever had, which is very telling because there's still so much to do. And when it comes to roles that I have played, it's interesting because you kind of have to hold both, right? I think especially as a Wasian person and someone who is very white presenting, especially now moving to New York, where there's no ethnic majority and there's a ton of Asian people. You know, when you're in a space like Baylor, that's all white, when you are just a sliver away from whiteness, you stick out like a sore thumb. And so I felt very, very Asian in those spaces. I was, for a couple of years, I was the only Asian actor in that space. But then you move to New York and you see how then I'm like, oh my God, no, I feel like this closer dial to whiteness because I'm so white passing in this space. And so in college, we did a show and there was a lot of controversy around it. It's called An Infinite Ache. And at the time, there were two of us. So there was me and this girl, let's call her Sarah. We were the two AAPI people. And before the school year started, like our director of the program, like hit us up and was like, hey, we're thinking about doing this show. It features one character, like Hope has to be Asian American, and here's the play, read it. If you're interested in it, like you two will be the ones who will audition. Fast forward and Sarah drops the program. So then I'm the only one. And I remember when they announced the show at Banquet, like our theater banquet where they say what's happening next year, they start telling, they do like the slow reveal of what the show is about. And it's like, it's about this couple through 50 years of their relationship from their first date to the day that Hope dies. And you see like them talk about these characters and this building, and then the character descriptions come. Or it's like Hope, Asian American. And I just feel everyone turn. And I felt awful. And it caused a lot of controversy where I was told, like, you know, I heard people, you hear shit, you know, that people say about you and it gets back, where people were like, this is so unfair. She's getting this just because she's Asian. She's getting stuff handed to her. And, you know, that gave me a huge complex about my own identity. And Hope, the character, is supposed to be, I believe, forgive me if I'm wrong, if someone fact checks me, I believe she's supposed to be half Chinese, half Japanese. And so even then, I know that I am stepping into a role that I cannot properly represent. I can represent it the best out of anybody in my community. And it was a role that I really did love, that made me feel very seen with like an Asian American lens, especially having parents who are biracial. It was all about a biracial couple. So I loved the story. I loved the journey that Hope went on. But I also recognized, like, you know, in an ideal world, I would not play this role again. In an ideal world, we would be so diverse and they could have such a access to these artists where you could find someone who can better represent this experience, because I can represent it to a certain extent. I understand the biracial like partnership experience because of my parents, but I don't know what it's like to be Chinese American. I don't know what it's like to be Japanese American. I don't know what it's like to be perceived completely as Asian. So that was something that I kind of had to hold both of. This is a role that I feel very seen and understood. And she was complex and funny and awful and wonderful in all these different ways. And so I had the joy of doing that in college, but also now knowing that I can happily let that go and know that somebody who is able to fully take Hope on in the way that she deserves to be represented will be represented in the future. So I guess like the short answer is like everything. Yes. And also there's complications with it.
Yeah. And I think what you point out is so important, that it seems like, yeah, post Crazy Rich Asians, hopefully we're moving into a space where now, you know, ethnicities and nationalities can be correctly represented within the Asian diaspora. Because those of us who understand the Asian diaspora understand that we are not a monolith, and we all have
Absolutely.
unique identities and experiences, and we do not always get along and see eye to eye on things. So yeah, hopefully, like you say, that is something that is shifting. But I also wanted to ask you about sort of the biracial element of it for you.
Sure.
Because, you know, being biracial is a thing, and being Wasian is a thing.
Yeah.
So have you also, I mean, have you had opportunities to sort of explore Wasian characters that you identify with? Have you experienced biracial erasure as an Asian American person and actor? Yeah.
Really easy for the second part of that question. Absolutely, so much erasure.
I set you up.
You set me up. I took it and I dunked it.
There you go. Sports.
Yeah.
Sports.
Sports.
Reference.
Yes.
There we go.
Very good. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I have had now, in my however many years of being an actor, my over a decade's worth of acting professionally, I have now had 2 auditions, one happening 2 days ago for biracial characters. So one was when I was a senior in high school. I had this casting call in LA, and it was specifically for biracial people, biracial women. And I remember sitting in that front waiting room, and it was the first time in my entire life where I saw people who looked like me. And it was at a casting call. And I remember talking to this girl, and then we realized like our moms were both like adopted, like around the same time from the same orphanage. And it was very, very odd, where all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, my experience is like right here in this room. And I've never run into this in the wild before. And then
that's crazy.
Sorry, it was insane. No, dude, it's insane. It was so weird. It was so weird. And then also like random tangent. And then both of our moms also had issues with their like citizenship, like years and years later. And we're like, what was happening? And like this year in Korea, where all of a sudden, like all these people who are adopted, the government was like, yeah, what if you're just like not a citizen anymore? You can't get a passport. Sorry. So it was one of those, like, I've never had an original experience in my life moments.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not that special. But it was a really, really cool moment of just being like, oh my God, there are other people who look like me. And the other one, I kid you not, was like 2 days ago. There was a casting call for like, it's like literally like a true crime, like reenactment thing, where they were looking for biracial femme people, to like one that read more white and one that read more Asian. And so like first time I've ever seen that casting call. And so like, yeah, those are the only 2 opportunities that I have seen. So when it comes to like stories being told about the Wasian experience specifically, I really haven't seen. I mean, there's tons of fabulous, fabulous plays and films about biracial experiences, I think specifically within the Black community. And even I've seen some where, you know, you can have like an Asian presence, and even if one character's mom, if they don't talk about it, is Asian, but usually that also comes with a lot of culture. And so something that I have been contending with is how much of your race and ethnicity can you claim when your culture has been taken away from you? And how much of a right to that culture do you have? So, you know, I grew up in all intents and purposes culturally in a white American household. But then I step outside and I'm called a Twinkie. And so it's, how do I hold both? And I've been saying that a lot. And I think it's because it's a very complicated thing of, yes, I am biracial and I experience that biracial discrimination on a semi-daily basis by going out in the world, but I don't have the culture to back that up. And so it's been a lot of healing that experience, a lot of coming to terms with that experience, and making sure I am making space for people to share their culture, and me not pretending like I know what that is. Because like how you're saying, like the Asian experience is not a monolith, and the Wasian experience is absolutely not a monolith either. Yeah. So I really haven't seen very many stories in that way. And that is another reason why I got on TikTok. I got on TikTok for a lot of reasons, but the main thing was I felt very alone in a lot of different capacities, and COVID just started. And all of a sudden I have this silly little app where I am meeting hundreds and thousands of people who have had a similar experience for the first time, where I could say, hey, this has been my struggle with blank. And I have all these people DM, comment, respond, being like, I have felt this way too. And I had no idea other people felt this way. And so in a much smaller way, that's how I view TikTok. It's like a tiny little slice of what I would hope mass media and popular forefront art can become. TikTok is not high art, but it is a way. It can't.
But what you do is high art.
Oh, I would. Yeah, that is so kind. Some recent things I would absolutely disagree.
But you're getting there. We're getting there.
It's a mixture of like, I always say it's stupid shit taken seriously. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, it's a mix of like joy and goofiness and doing like the bejeweled little dance with your friends, and also talking about a hate crime that happened. And that's just kind of like how TikTok operates. So I am grateful for the social internet in that way, that it is creating space for stories to be told when we don't necessarily have the cultural, financial, social power to do that in pop culture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as you're sharing these thoughts, I think what is coming up for me is the fact that, I feel a sense of like frustration every time I see an Asian biracial actor, whether they be, Wasian or otherwise, on screen or in a show, knowing that they're biracial and just being like, can we like get some like perspective on that point of view at all? Because they never, it seems like they never point out their biraciality. We never hear about it.
You never do. And it's so different than people who are fully / present as fully Asian. And, I can't even imagine what that would be if you are Asian in a different POC, and that must be a very complex experience. Right. So a little weird example of that is, so my senior year, trying to be careful with my words if anybody watches this. So my senior year, we did a production of Much Ado About Nothing that was set in the 40s. And I was playing I was playing hero, words. So Much Ado About Nothing, set in the 40s, I was playing hero. And it was a very diverse cast. Claudio is Black. Our Beatrice was Latina. But, we're also doing it in the 40s, and we're sitting down for our first table read. And the director's like, so it's in the 40s. And at the end, it's going to end with the announcement of Pearl Harbor. And I was like, huh? All right. Okay. And so I just kind of like raised my hand and I was like, hey, so since now it's not just going to be the 40s aesthetic, are we recognizing race in this? Because, within this time period, there would probably be like a separate recording booth for the POC actors, or at the very least, you would feel tension in some capacities. Like it probably would be very rare if you would be a person of color walking into a white space and have everyone just feel okay with that. And also, interracial marriage was only made legalized like 50 and some change years ago. So it wasn't legal then. How, are we recognizing this? I was the only one who asked that question. And my director just went, I didn't think about that. You are so brave. If I had a fucking nickel for every time someone called me brave for just asking what I feel like is a baseline question, I could pay for my rent. A millionaire. I'd be ready to go, baby.
Oh, I said billionaire, sorry.
Oh, hell yeah. No, we're ready to go. And I was just like, are you serious? Are you serious right now? And so, in that space, I then was like, okay, well, I guess I should lean more into the Asian bit, or in other circumstances, it's like, okay, I guess I should like fade back into whiteness. I don't think people recognize that biracial is such a specific experience, because I personally think because of the proximity to whiteness and just the colorism in our country. So specifically with Wasian individuals, people don't view that as a different experience because we're lighter.
And I think what you just illustrated, I think to me is sort of maybe not the essence of biracial erasure, but it's at least the one that we experience through our daily basis. The fact that people are just like, oh, I didn't think of that. I didn't consider that person's identity.
Exactly.
I didn't just see a movie or watch, an entire trilogy of movies with Keanu Reeves, for example, and think about like, what is his background and why is that like that not coming into play in any of the roles that he does ever, which it should at this point. It's like, can he play like an actual Asian character? Sorry.
No, dude, for sure. And with like the Pearl Harbor thing, it was like, this is something that is going to spur generations of racism, which, we're going to then move into a period of time where if you looked Asian vaguely, they would put you in a concentration camp, which also I never learned about in high school. That was something that I had to seek out on my own. That's a whole other conversation of just the erasure of Asian history and Asian struggle from our education system in the States, because American education system, bad. And so, that was a conversation that I was like, hey, not to like, and that's another thing, being afraid to take up space. I was like, not to like make things about me. And like, I don't want to upset anybody or spend too much time on this, but what does this mean for me? Like, if we're already like leaning into me being more Asian because you want that diversity or that perspective, let's be kind and say you want that perspective and representation in your story, then what do we do at the end? And I remember there were two options at the time. One was like, what if you hear the announcement and you just run off the stage? And I was like, no, that makes it feel like I'm I'm guilty. I had something to do with it. It's like that.
Yeah, talk about erasure. Talk about erasure.
Like literally, like
we don't want to touch that.
Exactly. And then I was like, what if you sink to your knees and the show ends with like you being left alone in the studio in tears? And I was like, yo, like, I don't know. That doesn't feel right either. And we ended up like finding something that was kind of a compromise that felt mildly okay. But, it's also, this is just also the assumption of, oh, must be what you would feel like in that moment. Of, oh, you would have to like get out as soon as you can, or just break down in tears, when, if we set up a world in that play where we actually recognized race, maybe we could have a very interesting conversation by the end of that. But after ignoring race for 2 hours in this show, and then being hit with a cultural political event that is so race centric, how do you do that? Like, how do you move on from that?
Yeah. And I guess for maybe people who are listening who don't understand exactly what we're talking about, like, how would you, in just a few sentences, like sum up what is biracial erasure? What does that mean to you? And what are other ways that you experience them? I guess not only as an actor, but just an Asian person living in the world.
Yeah, defining biracial erasure.
Because I think we've illustrated many different examples of it.
Yeah, I think how I would define it would be, like, in the simplest terms, it's a lack of complexity. I have seen a lot in my life and many circles that I grew up in, and even some relationships that I'm working through now, where I'm with people who, for better or for worse, want to view the world in like black and white, who want to put things in boxes that they can understand and not really think about it too hard. It's like a quick judgment of, I'm going to put you here, I'm going to put the situation here and move on. When you are biracial, when you are queer, when you are anything that does not aid in black and whiteness, you are having to force people to look at you with complexity. And that erasure is when someone goes, nah, I'm not going to do that. Like, you're not fully complex as a human. And I would say this is a shortcoming of a lot of allies. A lot of allies will then go, well, you're Asian, and we'll like fully lean into that. And it's coming from a good place of like, I want you to feel seen as an Asian American, which absolutely, but then also like, I don't have the cultural experiences of that. I don't know what it's like to walk down the street and be fully perceived as an Asian person in every single context that I go into. I've had a lot of those moments where I'm perceived as Asian, but I don't know it to that extent. And that is a whole part of my identity that is then tucked away. Like, similar with being non-binary, but femme presenting. I have realized, when looking back in some past relationships that I've had with straight cis men, that no matter how much I could talk to them, no matter how much we could love each other and try to make things work, these men could never see me as anything except a female. Even when I tell them that's not who I am. And I think those two things are very, very similar. So that's like definitely how I would define bi-erasure. And those are like some little things in my day-to-day that I found.
No, I think the way you summed it up is really brilliant. Just a lack of complexity, a lack of nuance. Seeing the world without like the shades of gray that we need to. That was lovely. So what getting to maybe a more I guess like pragmatic frame of mind, what advice would you give specifically a Wasian actor like us on how to sort of navigate this industry that we're in, this ever shifting industry that we're in today? And I guess the goal being like finding more creative spaces for us, and finding more better creative projects and roles for us?
I think community is huge. I think really finding people who understand your experience makes all the difference in the world. It makes you feel less alone. Also, really seeking out new things that are being made. Seek out playwrights that inspire you. Seek out stories that are being told from maybe the full Asian perspective, and also seek out things from the biracial perspective. Another thing I would say is, this is always something that people say, and then I roll my eyes and then I realize, oh, this is what I do in a different sense. But making your own art is so important. And it doesn't have to be, a full song and dance, huge production, like, oh, we're going to perform off Broadway, I'm going to cast people, it's going to be a thing. But any way that you can creatively express your experience and put it out into the world, that is how visibility happens. Erasure happens from two things. One, just lack of representation. And two, I think the fear of knowing that so often we will be pushed down. So why would I even try? Oh, what's that? I was thinking of a quote. I don't think I can quote it right, so I'll just move on.
So you can email it to me after, and then I'll edit it in.
It's the quote where it's like, you can't dismantle the slave owner's house with the master's tools. Something like that, which is specifically about the Black experience.
Right.
But I feel similarly with I think you can apply that principle to a lot of people of color and queer folk of, we really can't dismantle these institutionalized prejudice by leaning more into these stereotypes and leaning into those roles. And if that means saying no to opportunity, I think that is something that we have to do. And that's hard, especially as actors. I think we are told all the time to say yes, no matter what, and to just bat our eyes and be real pretty and not take up space.
Right.
Because you are given this idea of scarcity of, well, you should be lucky to have this opportunity. You should be lucky to get whatever, when there is so much power in you choosing not to audition for something or stepping away from a project when you see how a director is treating you or treating other people in your cast or the way that they're talking. Accountability is so, so important. And if we come in and clear out and we're saying this is not okay, and then bring new tools, bring new art to the table, I think that is how eventually we will find real change.
Yeah, there is so much power in community, and it's something that I think a lot of us haven't really experienced yet, because we haven't had those communities. But hopefully, I think there's examples that we have seen, not just Crazy Rich Asians, but actual, theater companies, all Asian theater companies that are starting to gain some ground, and just more and more projects involving us and featuring us, that I think we can start to experience the power and the success, like you're describing, of sort of shifting into that realm. And so I did want to ask you also, like, shifting gears a bit, because you mentioned the genderqueer and the bisexual aspect of not only your identities, but of your life as an artist. So to try to like merge some of the themes that we've been talking about, how does that aspect of your identity sort of merge with the biracial aspect and in sort of the erasure that we're talking about today? That's a big question. I'm glad that you're going to tackle it and not me.
No, like, because it all goes like so hand in hand for me. My joke is that I've never made a decision in my life. So I'm biracial, I'm bisexual, I'm genderqueer. And I think they all play together really beautifully, where I think that I was able to come to terms with my genderqueerness in an easier way because I grew up biracial. It's because I already knew the experience of being both and neither. I already knew the experience of not being, easily understood and existing outside of these very clear boxes.
Right.
And for me, it boils down to my kind of bi-awakening. I think it was like in middle school, and it's like after church, I'm hanging out with my best friend, Allie, and she's still my closest friend in the world. And I was talking with her, and, you know, just like being gals, and you're like sitting on the floor of my bedroom, we're like reading like teen magazines, we're just chatting it up. And I mentioned like very casually, I was like, you know, I just feel like being bisexual would just make more sense because you can just love people, right? And she was like, what? And I was like, yeah. It was like, you know, when you realize like other people don't think the way that you do. But
JK, just kidding.
I was like, no, unless. And so I feel like all of these experiences of being in the in-between, it's all about just looking at people as people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, at the end of the day, we are all human. At the end of the day, we are sharing this earth together. And I was raised in a Christian house. And so the idea of being made in the image of God, at the end of the day, if we believe that there's a higher purpose and we are all made in the image of this common thread, almighty creator, we have this thing that binds us all together. What is the point in labeling things to divide us? You know, and, you know, we have to have labels for us to understand things because, you know, in the culture that we live in, that is based in heteronormativity, transphobia, white supremacy, you have to make space and language for that. But it all boiled down, my awakening for a lot of those things was boiling down to, if I believe that all people are holy, if I believe that all people are tied together and are sacred, then why does it matter? Why does it matter who I fall in love with? Why does it matter what bathrooms people use? Why does it matter what pronouns I use? It was a way for me to feel fully human, was stepping into those nuances and sense like coming out and being fully planted in those in-betweens. I have never felt more human in my life, not just more myself, but more like a person. And I've talked to many friends about this, where I was like, I feel alive for the first time because I have made, you know, I put in, you know, the work to make space for myself to just live and to just experience people and try to experience life in the most authentic way that I can. Yeah. You know, and then in my like heart of hearts, I'm like, it's the future. Like, you know, it's not going to be weird. And, you know, we're not going to make it 100 years. The earth is dying. But let's say, as if like things are going to be fine, climate change isn't real. You know, it's like the National Geographic, like, this is what the average person will look like. You know, like everyone will be just a mix of whatever, because it won't matter and people won't have those prejudice. And one day we won't find a need to come out. My friend has a joke where she's like, everyone is bisexual until proven otherwise, which I think is hilarious.
Yeah.
We won't make assumptions of people just based off of how they present, because I hope that as a culture, we are evolving and moving towards a place of just pure human connection and human love, you know?
Yeah. As you're talking, like me being a genderqueer person who is sort of, I guess, like recently starting to come out and like consider how this like impacts my artistry and whatnot. It can be a little disorienting when thinking about that, and then, you know, playing, I guess, straight characters or characters who are assumed to be cis het. Yeah, but I always think about like, well, if I'm bringing my like full self to this character, maybe, I mean, how can I do that when I do not align with a lot of like maybe what this character aligns with and their identities. I think for me, like I sort of I take it upon myself to just give my characters like very like genderqueer and like bisexual backstories.
Oh yeah, same.
Which is helpful. But for you, like how has coming out impacted your I guess your acting craft, if that makes any sense in any of those ways?
Mm. Yeah, no, I definitely do the same thing of not wanting to erase myself from the role. If we want to get like acty talk, I definitely subscribe more to a Meissner point of view of what does it mean to bring yourself and your experiences into this role. My acting coach here in the city is Terry Knickerbocker, and he did a really wonderful job of giving me that perspective. So like as a perfectionist, I always had, growing up in a black and white world, being a perfectionist in recovery, I had this idea of there's a right way to act, there's a right choice to make. When he was like, anyone can get on stage, move around, and say words. An artist is what you bring to it. What is about you and your experience and your perspective that makes these words actually mean something? And it was great kind of hearing that in another person's words, because I found myself kind of subconsciously finding ways to write to my experience into these stories. So, you know, when I was any role that I would do, I would kind of like in my mind figure out, okay, within this cultural context, how would being biracial make sense? That's usually the big one of like, if we're doing a period piece, how, like, what experiences must I have gone through to make it to this point as a character if my parents' love was illegal, or if I was a child out of wedlock, what were the circumstances of my mom then getting pregnant? You know, like these are like things that you can then think of that can add a lot of complexity to your work. And now especially I see this stepping into my genderqueerness when it comes to casting. It has broadened my perspective of monologues I can do and roles to go out for, because I'm like, wow, no, there are a lot of roles that may have been traditionally played by men or traditionally played by cis folk that I think I could really add an interesting perspective on. And what's really cool is that there are some artists, there are some spaces that really invite that conversation and really encourage that discord. And that's what I'm really, really interested in. Because if we're putting rules to art, then like, what are we doing, man? Like, art should be something that's liberating and free. And art should be a space that gives a voice and a platform to people who wouldn't have it otherwise. So why then are we putting these very hard boxes around things?
Yeah, and I think one thing we can surely agree on is, I think, being the truest, fullest version of yourself is only going to make your art and the projects that you work on that much more full and meaningful and human. So yeah, I think that's wonderful that you're on that journey. And on that note, what are some of the projects that you're working on right now? What are we going to see you in next? What are some of the viral TikToks that you have coming down the pike that you can give us like a sneak peek on?
I wish I knew.
Yeah.
I will say like what I just, excuse me. I will tell you a little bit about like what I just finished, because it was my first like professional acting gig in New York. And I really had, I honestly think it was an honor. I got to play Viola in 12th Night, which as a bisexual genderqueer person, there is literally not
iconic,
a more perfect role in the entire world. And she had been my favorite character in the Shakespeare canon for a long time.
Of course.
And that was a really amazing experience because I really got to walk into that with the full expression of, at the very least, my sexuality and my gender identity. Especially because, you know, it's also a character who presents very femme at the beginning and then kind of finds themselves trickling on at the end. And there are even like lines with Orsino at the end, and Orsino is still slipping up and calling Viola Cesario, and he doesn't even know, and it just adds so much complexity to the sexuality and gender conversation. And that was such a cool thing to do, where I was like, wow, I get to, it was, again, I don't have to compromise in this aspect of myself in this moment, because this is a show that celebrates diverse queerness in all these different spaces.
Yeah.
So I was very lucky that that was like the first professional theater thing that I've done since moving up here. What's coming in the future? It's, you know, I wish I knew, and I'm becoming okay with that. I'm someone who, I mentioned this earlier, that I'm a perfectionist in recovery. And I'm someone who used to hold my future very, very tightly. I would just kind of like white knuckle my life. And like, if okay, I have to be this before I'm this age, or else I'm a failure. And I got to do this, and this. And I am stepping into a period of my life where I am truly, for the first time, deeply and truly happy and satisfied. And it's because I am now surrounded by people who love me and inspire me, and who I love. I have a more vibrant relationship with my family than I ever would have dreamt of when I was a young kid. I have a relationship with myself that I actually know. And so because of that, I see how it's affecting my art. And it's so interesting that I really do think that the universe has a silly way of letting things fall into place. And when you don't try to force yourself into a timeline that you don't belong in, a lot like, you know, another amazing movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once. We're all
Let's talk about it.
Yes, I love it. You know, we're all in the timeline we're supposed to be in for a reason.
Right.
And what does that mean? And so I feel like I'm in this period of my life where I'm fully, for the first time, I am on my correct timeline. And what does that mean? And it is amazing that since I have done that, opportunities like this happen. Like, I got your email and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then this morning I got an email from someone who's like, hey, I'm doing a video project about Hapa people and their experiences in the world. And this music video gave me that concept. And then I had an audition for a Hapa Wasian person. And, you know, I've been here for over a year and I haven't had any of these. But it's like, now I feel like I'm on my path. I am on my correct timeline. I'm stepping into my power and my purpose in a way I've never been before. And now these stories and opportunities are coming into focus.
Right.
And I think it's because I'm open for the first time to them. Because when I first moved to New York, I think a lot of actors can empathize with this, and a lot of creatives, I'll say social media people too. You come here and you're like, oh my God, I'm paying so much rent and I need to make it worth my while. So I'm going to work my ass off. So I'm going to audition for literally anything that Actors Access will give me. Like, when I first moved here, for the first 9 months, I was filming like 5 auditions a day and filming TikToks every single day. And I wasn't getting cast in things because I was all auditioning for things that weren't right for me. Right. And then I was burnt out for those opportunities that were right for me. Right. On TikTok, my views were tanking because I was forcing myself to make content that I wasn't passionate about. I became a quantity over quality creator, which I never wanted to be. Also because Ben Shapiro talked about me on his YouTube channel.
I saw that.
Oh my God. And his little gremlins came after me. So TikTok then kind of hid my content for a while. Yeah. Oh my God, it was wild.
I'm glad that you've recovered from that, and now
it's been a full
winning.
year. It has been a full year, but I feel like now I'm not getting death threats anymore, so that's kind of like cute and quirky of me.
I'm sorry to hear that. That's
hey, I
But like I
now
said, you're
find
winning.
it hilarious. I'm winning now, and I find it hilarious. He is still a small man. And maybe one day, if I'm lucky, I can be on his podcast, and that would
Oh,
just be a beautiful moment for me.
woo! Dang,
Let's
you
go,
would light
Vinny.
his world on fire.
Let's go, Vinny.
I will pray for that.
Oh hell yeah! This is my public invitation, Vinny boy. If you're listening, let's do it, baby. We'll have such a great time. We'll have a content day.
Yeah, he's like the opposite of like my target market, but yeah, if this rolls across his desk, yeah, Ben, come on my podcast too.
Hey, we're gonna come on this podcast. It'll be the three of us, and we'll have the cutest, quirkiest conversation, and everything will be great.
That'll be lovely. Oh,
I know, but it's like now I'm actually so like when you ask me like what's ahead, I don't know. You know, you never know how the algorithm's gonna react to things. Like I just did a video of something that for all intents and purposes should have gone viral. I did another Caucasity Audacity video, tanked. Absolutely tanked. And those are my videos that always do the best because that's, as of recently, why people follow me.
Yeah.
No views, absolutely no views. And so that was another way for me to be like, I cannot control my future.
Right.
I cannot control how things fall into place. All I can control is what I take on and the projects that I want to create. So really what you can see ahead, I hope, is just stuff that makes me happy and stuff that I think will make other people happy. I really do want a project that I have been like toying around with doing. I want to challenge myself and doing like trying one new creative endeavor a day or a week for a period of time, because I realized how many amazing creatives I have in my life and how many cool artists I have, and how when you work in art, you can easily feel burnt out by art.
Yeah.
So my day job is doing social media for other brands. And because of that, it's very easy to feel burnt out on doing content. It's very easy to feel burnt out for being in front of a camera and writing. So I want to do something that can push me to expand my creative lens. So I've like made a list of like, okay, here are my friends who I'm going to reach out to. You're going to teach me how to do this and this. And it's going to be a part of me feeling more and more like a human of how can I create more? How can I expand? So that is a series that I hope to film in the future. But in the case of what I'll be cast in and the virality of stuff that I do, I don't know. But I hope that my passion and my art will be received well and will reach the people that they need to reach, regardless of view count, regardless of box office success. I just hope that whatever I put out can make someone feel more seen or make someone have their perspective expand like just a little bit. And at the end of the day, that's what matters.
And that's funny that you say that, because the first TikTok video of yours that I saw was the one that you did. It was like a year and a half ago, I think. And you were talking about like the little eye bags that we have, like East Asian people. Yeah. And I was like I had never known that before. And I always thought that these were ugly. And I always thought that I was just getting old. And then I saw that video and I was like, wow, that is amazing. And so now like well, I'm not gonna say every East Asian person I see, I look for them, but I constantly like look for these and I like appreciate them. I'm like, woo. And it's just amazing that what we can learn, just the conversations among ourselves and like meeting, I guess, other people that we share identities with and kind of like share a similar worldview perhaps. So yeah, keep it coming. And on that note, what are your social media contacts, your website? How do we get in touch with you?
Okay, great. Yeah, so you can follow me on TikTok at TikTok Tina with periods between tick and talk. It's like the early times of being on TikTok and like all of the usernames were available.
Right.
And I just found it funny. And now here we are. So TikTok Tina on TikTok. And then on Instagram, I'm at Christina Calcote. That last name is Calcote. And then my website is christinacalcote.com. So anyway, you would want to like reach out, collaborate, go through my website, or just want to be friends on social media, let's hang out and do some stupid shit and have a really good time doing it.